that was more or less it.
What are the columns E and E, F?
This
expected, E is travel costs and F is
oh, E, F, and J. The first row, yeah. This is how much they said it's going to cost, how much they needed, and the third one is accumulated, how much we paid. And this is like accommodation, food, and travel, what they requested. Some people didn't want to.
Some people requested some rather specific amounts, and now they know their ranking if they're watching the video.
Well, they know the ranking, yeah, probably. But well, individually, it's okay, I guess. But so yeah, so that's the ranking. That's how we did it. Everybody voted between -3 and 3. We get the median out of it, and that's how we ranked everybody. But from that, and that's what the BoF is about, I built this list. So there is recommendations for the next people to do, which is not really important here. It's more about how much time you're gonna need. Especially for the Germany guys, well, you already being through that. So, but for the Germany beat, to have an idea of how much time it takes to get 10 people to agree on something, there are notes for that. But the main thing is, for me, most of the 10 people had different dimensions, right? Some people care if you were coming from US or not, or Americas. Some people cared if you were your first time or if you were from some type of diversity. Some people cared if you were a strong contributor or not. Some people cared if you are willing to pay money or not. So I more or less synthesized all these dimensions here as form of questions. And my first thing was, most of this should be possible to be automated, likely inside Summit itself. The first... my main concern is if we publish these rules, because if we tell them like this is the rules you're gonna be bound to, would people then try to cheat us? Would they try to lie? Do we care about that or not? And then I'm not sure how to collect this answer from the project or from the chairs or from DebConf itself, but we probably need to ask this somehow and find out. But so the first thing which is very strong is DebConf in US, if you're coming from America, you got higher points. So if you're coming from South America, Central America, or North America, you got better points than other people. This should be fairly easy to find out because people has to tell them like I'm coming from this country. So that is an easy one to rank when they don't forget to fill the field.
It wasn't the required field.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a comment about that. Is I never feel where I'm coming from because I live in France. I am from Spain, and I found very annoying later to be shown in the report like 3 persons from French came or 3 French persons came. I think it's also your case. I mean, imagine that you're Brazilian.
Right, yeah.
So maybe one of the problems we have in the registration system is that when they're asking you the text, it's no explain what for.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. And probably we can separate those things in terms of this is just going to be used for us to determine if it's a fair price or not. So that's doable. And also another challenge here is we never had any DebConfs at Asia or Africa. So when do you prioritize those guys? Like when do you tell it's time for Asia? Because it's always expensive. New Zealand was we had a big discussions around a request from New Zealand because it was quite expensive. And then it was like, oh, it's easier for them to go to Germany, and then our team was splitted. No, it's cheaper to go to US. No, it's cheaper to go to Europe. So
Well, actually, I think
expensive
no, there
anyway.
was one from China, I think, that had that situation rather than New Zealand.
I think well, maybe both. I don't know. I remember for New Zealand. So
But like in the case of one particular person I'm remembering from China, the cost of ticket to get to Portland was almost twice what it would be to go for them to go next year to Germany.
right. The other thing, which is a very recurrent, and people usually penalize, like not only this year, from past years, I remember that. Usually people get heavily penalized is if they are not willing to pay a part of their trips. So if people ask for their entire, like, oh, my trip is going to be $1,000, I want $1,000, usually half of the team will penalize heavily against that. Meaning that if I'm coming from Brazil and Martin is coming from Brazil and I ask for 1,000 but I'm willing to pay 100, I probably will get scored above him if he's not willing to pay some part of it. Does it matter? Do we care about it? Because we don't enforce. My main point is we never enforce this. If somebody gets a cheaper ticket, we don't enforce it. So you go first and then Marty.
Yeah, so everybody, given that we didn't have any rules in place, the bursary team members could use whatever basis they wanted for their rankings,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But this is something I feel very strongly about, that it's not appropriate for us to penalize somebody because we are second guessing their costs, especially since there are a lot of other costs related to travel beyond. The only thing we reimburse is we reimburse the cost of a flight. If it costs them $50 or $100 to get to the airport because they have to take a bus or they have to rent a car or whatever, there are costs. They have to pay for their own meals while they're traveling to the airport. There's lots of other stuff that goes into travel that are costs that we're not reimbursing. And I don't think it's fair for us to second guess and say, for somebody, especially in countries where, it's a lot more money. Well, I guess cost of living means that maybe it is or maybe it isn't. But anybody who's traveling, they're invested in that, whether they're asking for the full price of their plane ticket or not, unless they're getting a ride to the airport in their town.
Right. Just this is a little bit different from what we discussed over the list. This is like the person asked for 9%. They didn't ask for everything. Right? They said, I'm willing to pay $100. That's it.
Yeah, but yeah.
Right, but I'm saying exactly that how much they say they're willing to pay of their own ticket price.
Right.
Shouldn't affect.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Because anybody that's traveling, there's costs associated with that beyond the ticket price.
Right.
And there's costs associated with taking the time to do it.
I completely agree with you. I'm also a little bit torn though, because in general I'm not a huge fan of free stuff. Like it's travel given away for free. Usually that leads to more views than if there is a certain self-commitment to it. Now, this is not really a form of self-commitment though, saying I can pay 10%. It would be much better if they sent the 10% to us and then we reimburse them 100% afterwards, but that's the Nigerian scam.
My point is though, to get to the airport, they're already doing that. If they make it to the airport, they've done it. If they make it to the conference, they've done it.
So I don't think that should play any role, because that otherwise you are going to be. What if these two Brazilian people you were talking about? What if one of them, has 4 kids and
Right.
has 0?
So that's why, all those questions, the idea is to get some feedback, because when I'm writing this proposal, I'll try to say, here is the feeling around this topic. And then that's my point, is say, we kind of think that this doesn't matter. So for the next time, the rule, because this year we didn't have a strict rule. Every team member had their own vision and they ranked. For the next year, I would like to have some rules and as much as possible be automated, so there is no, we reduce the margin for interpretation. Tassia?
Yeah, into the same talk. It's very hard to make an evaluation when you don't have the full picture. Because if you are going to give points or whatever to people because they say that they're going to pay the full cost without evaluating, if this person has a job and the whole financial situation, or if it's a student from which country, there's a huge, I think it's just one very specific question that doesn't give you any idea of the full picture.
There is a topic about that also, you'll see in a minute. The other thing is, does it matter if you're a DebConf newbie? This year we didn't have the newbie queue, which seems to be very successful from other years. I think we should have it again, and I think bursaries should take care of it as a separate queue. We don't need to have other people involved in this process and make it confusing for whoever is subscribing. But then for next year, we should be sure to make it work and advertise and this kind of stuff. Because this year we tried to do that with a few people. I think this is the first time this person is coming, and that also correlates to the next one. For a few people we had this, like, we should bring this person, right? This is a minority, like we have, it is not well represented among us, so we should bring this person. And then it was, everybody felt the same way, so it's something that the team cared about, so probably something we should think. But then what types of diversity we cover, right? It's not just gender, there's other types, and then it starts to become tricky. The one big question is what Martin mentioned is, are we worried about people taking vacations on us? Like we are paying for free vacations because you're not covering every single corner and checking everything. Because once we approve it, we are very relaxed. We basically tell SPI or FFIS, is like, here's the list of people. If they send you a ticket and then reimburse them, we don't really go through a long, detailed process to do that. So another common topic that came this year was like, should we penalize people that don't answer all the questions? We had a lot of that. People that didn't provide all the money information we requested. People that, please explain me why do you need the sponsorship? Sometimes people just said, because I'm a DD. Is that fair? It's not. This is another of our concerns. Some people said, some people said is like, I work the entire year for Debian for free. I have my job and I spend a lot of time on my volunteer. I think I'm entitled to. Other people actually told a little bit of their lives to us, like things like I have kids and I'm unemployed and then I really want to see you guys again, but I don't have the money. So we get access to these details. So that's exactly the next point. But before, go ahead, Steve.
So I think that when the person said, I'm a DD, it was not, I think that was an answer to the question, what do you do for Debian? I think because that was one of the questions, what do you do for Debian? Why do you request a sponsorship? And that was, what do you do for Debian? The answer was, I am a DD. I believe when we wrote that question, the purpose of it was to make sure that the bursaries team had enough information to know who the person was, not for them to judge their qualifications. We've had discussions in the past about this, and that was how I remember that we were structuring that, was it was about, we want to ask the question to make sure that the person who's submitting themselves, that the bursaries team has enough information to make an informed opinion, not to judge whether they've given enough detail because they think they should have written more. Because, like, from my perspective, if I know the person is a DD, I don't need more information to evaluate whether they would be a contributor to the conference.
Tassia?
Regarding the vacations, I think, yeah, we could also like keep records for next year. And maybe something that we could encourage is people posting or like making public their activities during that DebConf. Because then I don't know how to scale this, but it's true. Like this is also something that I have concerns about, and it's true that once people get sponsorship, like here we don't have any means of controlling what they do, so they can't really spend the whole day outside and or do party at night and don't attend to talks or walks or whatever. So if we had a way of not really keeping track, but that encourage very much people to publish what they are doing, then we could maybe next year have access to what they did last year. They were sponsored and...
Sure. So Murray, then Dave, then...
Yeah, I personally think it would be fair and appropriate for us to ask people who take travel sponsorship, also in fact people who take food and accommodation sponsorship, to have effectively a compulsory require a report of their DebConf afterwards. Of course, this wouldn't stop them from having holidays.
Compulsory what, sorry?
Like just a paragraph or two on their DebConf. I think this clearly would not stop abuse because people can invent something, but I think it would discourage abuse a little bit, and also it would help us a lot for going to sponsors in future to say, look at all these useful things people have done who you paid for.
We would put it in the final report.
Yeah, I think that's nice.
So, are we going to start that today?
No? I think it's too late now to
I think that's,
We can
attach
ask
additional
for it.
conditions. Sure, we
Not
can
as
ask.
conditions. And it's not a condition because all we're saying is if you would like to be considered for sponsorship next year, then this is going to be beneficial if you do it.
Yeah.
Because it is actually for next year.
Dave.
So,
Sure.
I think that people will forget, and tracking reports sounds like a nightmare to me, but I think is if you're not a DebConf newbie, then you should be willing to say what you did at the last DebConf. And some people will have a tough time remembering, but then, I mean, I think that's fair as part of the process. You're applying for the 7th time for sponsorship to DebConf. And so what did you do last time? And it doesn't have to be anything baroque. And I think that would remove some of the enforcement questions. It's just a question on the form. You can either fill it out or not, and we can, you know, tell people we're going to ask for this. So
Yeah.
encourage them to make a blog post that they can link to. That would be completely okay from my point of view. But also, anyway.
Yeah, before Martin, do you still have the point, or you already made?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing is, as long as we agree with ahead of time, I think the rules are clear. Like, if you're applying for this, you have to do that. And if you don't submit your report, we are going to penalize you next year. Then it's fine. It's fair game, right? The rules are ahead of time. And the thing that I mentioned that you said like about details is that how much details do we want to know about why people can't afford? Like, does it matter for Debian if you are poor or unemployed or anything like that? Because we do ask that in a very vague question, and people like share details, or sometimes they just, as I said like Lucas said that, and I know I can quote him. He said like, I'm the DPO, I work a lot, so I hope I can have the sponsorship. Murray.
Yeah, on that point, I think more important in a way than exactly what is the rule on that, I think it's more important that we had a kind of a level agreed rule for everyone. At the moment it's very opaque, and some people feel personally that they shouldn't apply for travel sponsorship because they have enough money and other people need the travel sponsorship more. Other people who with good jobs in Europe or the US apply because, well, they're doing work for Debian.
Yeah.
And that part is not fair. I mean, at the moment, they will probably be treated fairly if they apply, but many people do not apply. And it's unfair if some people feel they are entitled to it and apply and get the money every year, and other people never apply.
Yeah, that's Lucas find me during the conference, Lucas Newsman, and then he told me, he asked me about how was the process and if you could have bring more people, and we discussed it a little bit. And one of the things that he asked me to do is for next year to ensure that we advertise heavily that people should apply for a sponsorship. So that we should tell people to ask for travel sponsorship because Debian money is over 200,000 and he wants us to spending this money to bring people here.
Now I hear it.
We can do that.
We need it for India in 2016. India.
Go ahead, Dave.
So, I mean, I'm fine with advertising that everybody should apply, but I think we should agree that everybody should apply before we advertise it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think so.
this goes back to the question of how much does financial need matter in the allocations
Yeah.
process?
Go, Marty and then Marga.
I don't think you're going to ever be able to get a response from anyone, whether they can afford it or not. You know, with any other conference, I think it's important that we work very hard to have as much money as possible so that we can buy it for as many people as possible. And in this regard, I would be just briefly interested. I stepped in 2 minutes late, maybe you said it at the beginning, but it was my understanding now that we didn't use up all the money that we could have used for travel sponsorship this year. And even though we had like some people in the list,
Yeah.
so that was probably because of time pressure and everything. What can we do to prevent that happening next
Yeah.
year?
I had two specific suggestions that I'd made on the list. I don't know if we want to go into that right now.
Let's just hear Marga and then you can go.
So I have two comments. One is that maybe we could ask people to be volunteers, like for the video team or front desk or something, in return for getting the sponsorship. And then the other thing is that for me, financial need should be a very important point. So participating in Debian is a very important point. Financial need is also a very important point. For me, I think we should try to bring as many people as possible, and if you can't afford it, then why should Debian pay for it? If you can't afford it. If you can't afford it, then we want you here, so we pay for it. But it's very difficult to assess, and you have this, what if people self-assess, and
Well,
there's going to be people that like don't think that what they do is valuable enough, but others do, and there's going to be people that overstate what they do. So it's very hard to get that right.
right. I think the 2 points are related, or is different?
Well, so I was going to comment on what can we do about spending money
Right.
and making sure we spend the money that's in our budget. And the two proposals I had were, first of all, look at our historical usage of our travel sponsorship funds and set an overcommit level that we give the bursaries team based on those historical rates. Just to say, yes, you can approve 1% or 3% more than what's in the budget, knowing that we will have some cancellations because we've never not had them. And the other thing is to have stronger expense tracking earlier, to the point where we know exactly how much it's costing us out of our budget for each person, so that as we identify people who are not attending, or as we get closer down and we see like date ranges of people actually attending versus not, we can move the money from the accommodations and food budget over to travel sponsorship. Because based on just that alone, we had enough money to sponsor another 5
Yep.
people, but we couldn't be sure of exactly how much money we had in the budget for that until it was too late for them to get reasonable tickets.
So Murray and then Marty.
Yeah, I still personally question how things will really work if we just say that everyone, by working for Debian, irrespective of financial circumstances, is eligible. Yes, we may have 200,000 in the bank account, but you could easily spend that on one conference. I mean, this conference probably, the amount people spent on travel would have been a lot more than that. I will say personally, I haven't yet applied for travel sponsorship for DebConf because I thought I was in a reasonably well-paid stuff in Europe. I am not deserving compared to other people of Debian targeting me with that money. Of course, if it is announced as a policy, everyone working on Debian ought to be getting travel sponsorship, then I would apply.
Sure.
And I'm sure many other people would suddenly start applying, and you then you actually will need to filter it, and then it becomes a bit pointless that you've told all these extra people to apply.
Right.
So what's going to happen if we introduce a checkbox that says, if you don't get sponsorship, will you still come?
We've tried that before.
Yeah? And what happened?
People say they won't come.
So the intent of the current wording on the webpage is, how much is it going to cost you? How much sponsorship money do you need to attend DebConf? So the intent of the current questions is to ask them to provide needs-based information to us as input. I don't see any reliable way to ever be more precise than that. I mean, having people evaluate their own need, people have different views on what their needs are. So like, and just because they have money doesn't mean that they don't have other things that are also important for them to spend it on. If they have a family, if it's a significant cost to their family for them to spend the time away at a conference, and as a result they have to give up something else, then it may be that if they don't get sponsored, they're not going to come. Does that mean that because the reason they would not come isn't due to the balance of their bank account, does that mean that we should reject them? I mean, everybody has their own personal circumstances, and I don't know that always saying that looking at how much money somebody makes is the driving factor for whether we should sponsor them.
So maybe instead of trying to solve that problem, which I think we all agree we can't solve, we should focus again on the expecting certain things from sponsored attendees, which includes volunteer session signups and it includes a little report. that they should send in. And it's not a requirement per se, but maybe we could at this conference already say that, write your reports, because when we have your report from last year about the stuff that you've done, that's a very, very important piece of data for us to decide you next year on in terms of sponsorship. And then if Moray writes down that, he rewrote DAC in that week, because he didn't
No one
anything.
sponsor him under any circumstance.
No, but then like, by all means, heck, you should come again.
And rewrite it again.
Murray.
But again, I think for the financial side, I agree. It's not possible to, without giving some completely ridiculous 10-page form and lots of numbers, you cannot evaluate people's true circumstances. However, it does seem to me personally that Debian does not sustainably have money to sponsor everyone who is contributing to Debian.
That's
It
true.
therefore seems to me personally that we, again, I'm not saying this wins everyone over everyone else. I personally feel that we ought to be prioritizing people who have some financial need, not merely because they are contributing. And I think if we set that as an expectation and document that, we will already filter people who really have no justifiable financial need. Obviously,
What does
not all-
justifiable mean? You have no way to measure this.
Well, so are you saying we should sponsor everyone? Are you saying
No, I'm saying,
Trust each other.
I'm saying,
Go to that.
I'm saying however you word it, you're gonna get some people who are gonna feel bad about asking for the money, and you're gonna have some people who are going to feel that what they do is important, and we have no way to effectively evaluate this by any sort of objective metric. So no matter what we write, people are gonna decide to ask for whatever money they're gonna ask for, and we have no way of telling whether it's justifiable or not.
But on average, the problem should solve itself, kind of, right?
Well, but I'm saying that we are already asking the kinds of questions. We already have questions saying, how much do you need? Adding different words doesn't change, it's the same fundamental problem.
There is, at the moment, there is no documentation anywhere to tell people whether or not they should,
Yeah.
everyone should apply, or
That-
only people who have a big need.
Except for the emails or the forms that we send, there is no details on this is what we encourage.
I'm
This
not
is
talking about the form here, I'm just saying the emails that are sent out and so on do not specify at the moment
Okay.
who ought to apply.
Well, okay.
There's a reason for that, and that is if the 3 people currently discussing things can't agree on a standard, what are the odds that the project can, right? There's a
Yeah.
deep lack of consensus on this issue. So that's why it's not
But it
expressed
does,
clearly. There's nothing to express.
It is unclear.
it does seem unfair to me if it's just because the people who brazenly apply are the ones that automatically get funding, and a lot of other people are not currently applying because
So-
they feel they're not appropriate
So
to
if the
apply.
point is that you want to encourage more people to apply, then I'm okay with that. I agree that
I think it's
messaging that in a
completely
way that
opposite.
encourages
What
people to
is-
apply
I
is good.
personally don't think it's sustainable for everyone to apply.
Yeah, I think it's not.
But if the team cannot implement any policy, does not agree on any policy, then we should, whether or not the team tells, then other people should be saying everyone should apply.
I don't understand what's not sustainable in everybody applying. Everybody applying doesn't mean everybody gets sponsored.
It's just more work for bursaries.
yeah.
No, but
Oh yeah, it's definitely more work for
it
bursaries.
is more work, and it may happen.
It doesn't help the project.
Yeah, because then many people that could afford is gonna
Yeah.
apply, is gonna have the travel sponsorship. So people who really can't come without the
Won't get it.
sponsorship won't come. That
Right. So
we are trying, like, we're raising
Right.
money for people who can, and at the end, those who can
yeah.
just shifting money.
No, I
So,
disagree. Which is either here or there, I guess. So I think at least I don't understand saying everybody should apply as saying need doesn't matter. And so I think it's a question of where this filtering happens. And I think that Maury has a point that people self-filtering is not necessarily a good algorithm, because if you're, I mean, maybe for some people it's obvious, like, what's his name that runs the bunch to apply for travel sponsorship?
Mark Stewart.
Yeah. Vorlon, right, no, the other guy, your boss. But for a lot of people, right, it's tough to say. And so what we should do is, in the evaluation process, use that as part of the ranking, like we do now in some kind
But
of
how?
randomish, not very good way. Right, I agree. But if we could agree at least that the idea is that it's part of the ranking, that would be progress. Right? I mean, that's a different question, rather than saying you should only apply if you can't go otherwise, right? I mean, that seems like not a great algorithm, because it's not an easy question to answer anyway, right?
Right, you might be able to
Yeah, I think
go and like with a lot of sacrifice.
Right, whatever sacrifice means
Yes.
for you.
Let me just wrap this, and then we can finish the discussion, because this is the last thing. So those are ideas. This is different from what happened, that it generated the questions. This is actually ideas that I don't think we ever tried, and I don't know if we'll ever will. But so when I said self-assess, of course I don't mean we'll take that as whatever you self-assess it and rank, but it's like, would that work to ask like how much we're involved or how much you plan to be involved next year? Should we switch to percentage values? That is the discussion that I had with Steve and on the list, which is, if you say you can pay $100 out of 1,000, but you get tickets for $800, we ended up paying your entire ticket. Should we say instead of it's percentage, like I can pay 90% of my flight ticket, doesn't matter how much it is, and then if you get a cheaper discount, we'll also get, Devin also gets a discount.
It doesn't work with flight prices. You can't. In my personal experience, I applied. Okay, I'm offering right now what I entered in this field. I entered $1,100, and a few days later, the flight price was already 1,200 or something.
Right.
So. For me, it would simply not have been possible to come without a sponsorship.
Right.
And because there's sometimes this situation, I can explain it if you want, but the problem is, if there were only one percentage, I still wouldn't know how many I have to pay myself. So I have no way of planning.
Right. I mean, the point is you can still say 100%, right? Then we will have to deal with if you get a more expensive ticket. So it's a two-way problem. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying we can save money together, but it also means Debian will have to make a reserve. Like DebConf will have to have like, I don't know, 10-20% reserve, because we will get a lot of more expensive tickets, right? So I don't really know.
Well, it could be 100% up to
Exactly.
number.
There is a few things that we can do, but the other thing is, I don't know if it's, right now we all rank everybody. Maybe it's easier if we rank them in different dimensions, like 2 people rank on geography, 3 people rank on budget, 3 people rank on activity and team membership. So this is more about internal dynamics. And the other thing is, this is more about system-wise, and instead of having the ranking, having a yes or no, and then you go back to the budget team and they do whatever they have to, which is like, you should sponsor these people, this is high priority, and then this is the next, and then this is the next, and whatever you do, we don't care, this is the final list. And this is the big discussion and topic that we discuss it, and Steve is very strong about never reducing the amount of money that people requested, and he already explained why. And then I think that in some cases, if you offer 50% instead of nothing, would be better. And we didn't have time to keep arguing about that because we had to do other stuff.
So there
but
are
that's
cases where that
another
might be a better outcome, but there are also cases where that could actually be a bad outcome.
Absolutely.
As a result of offering it, it results in hardship. And I don't think that we can distinguish those cases with the information that we have, which is why I think it's better to not do it.
Yeah.
Why would it result in hardship?
Because if you ask somebody, my plane ticket, how much is your plane ticket? $1,000. How much of it can you pay? $200. And that's what they say they can pay. And you come back and you say, well, no, we can't give you $200, or we can't give you $800, but we can give you $400. And that person really wants to go. But the first time you asked them the question, they honestly told you, this is what I think I can afford. And we offer them less money than that. What are they going to do? They're going to look at that and they're going to say, I can get to DebConf if I stretch my money a little bit farther. And in some cases, that's not a good thing for that contributor to do. And I think it's not good for us to encourage our contributors to sacrifice that much beyond what their
Maybe next year
initial.
they can just raise the amount they asking for, just in case if we change mind.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah. So the last thing that I thought is we don't have a database for sponsorship. So we don't know from year to year what happened, which I'm willing to go and try to pursue as much as we can find. And then we would have a database of, hey, we sponsor this guy every single year. This time he's going to give his spot to somebody else, right? We can try to make those decisions if we have this, because right now we are basically on an empty canvas every single year. Like, we don't know what happened. Some of us remind, but we don't. And also changing systems doesn't help with that. So
we have this data in
we can
spreadsheets or
we can dig this data. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this data is around somewhere.
So I have been in this committee when Good Sport had like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
At some moment I started doing that because I remember about this in that content that repeat a lot of the conversation we are having here,
Yeah.
the discussion. So I'm willing to work with you on that because the year I have worked in that committee I have still data.
Okay, great.
I think we really need to keep some kind of historic track. It's tracked because there are people that when the DebConf is out of Europe, they're asking sponsorship. But when it's in Europe, they are not asking sponsorship. So, which I found is a quite good balance, I mean, for European people.
Right.
There's also the contrary. Something I said 4 years ago that I think is worth mentioning is that we should consider changing the way that asking a sponsorship works. Right now, you just do your registration, and the only thing you need to do is invest in 5 minutes in putting some data in a web formulary. I mean, it doesn't require you a lot of effort, and you have a lot to win. There are people like Moray says that they say, okay, I don't need the money, I won't do it. But for plenty of people, it's you just click and you might get money. And I also don't like of this system that there is no way of feedback between the bursaries team and the person asking the money. Sometimes it happens, for example, when I went to DebConf 10, I asked for sponsorship. I bought my tickets a lot of time in advance because I saw a very good offer. So I even asked a lot of money for a trip from Spain, and somebody from the committee asked me, oh, is your amount right? Because you didn't ask a lot of money. But it's the only time I have seen somebody reaching out to other people. I have been in the committee and I haven't done that.
Yeah, we did that this year. Mostly Steve, and I feel like Martin also did. We had like, I think, less than 10 people that we had like questions. One case was somebody that asked more money than the flight ticket. So the flight ticket was 1,000 and the person asked 1,200, 1,200, and it was like, is this a mistake? And then we actually find out that the person was considered all the other, like taxi to the airport, price to get a visa. So the person was like, okay, my flight ticket's 1,000, but I actually need 1,200 to do all the stuff that I actually need to travel, which was, I think, the first time I saw that. But we reached it out. But I agree, the system should have some easier way to
I
interact.
prefer some system like by email or something like that, and there is some going for, and people can ask things.
Yeah.
Because you can know everything about the situation of the person, but sometimes you can miss some questions.
So this year, when we did have doubts and where we were confused about the information or we thought it looked strange, we did reach out to them and ask for clarification by email. So they had an opportunity to respond. We had a couple of people who had strange requests for food sponsorship but not accommodation, or we wanted to know why they were not asking for accommodation, because we thought if they have the money to apply for a hotel, should that affect their ranking for food accommodation as well?
We had the other way around now, so they didn't ask for food, and we said, "Oh, I didn't know. I thought you were saving money." No, it's okay. You can ask for food. So,
A few cases like that, a few with some strange prices for tickets.
so we are almost out of time. So I will roll the three last comments, and then we kind of close session. Luciano.
I like this idea of it's too easy somehow, and I also remember that when I was also evaluating people, I remember that it was hard to know if people live nearby, why the prices were so different and that kind of things. So maybe we can extend the system to tell more information. Okay, which flight are you planning to take, or and how much is each flight, how much is where is your stops, and that more information that you show that you make some research and investigate which one is the best option, and even we can share that information with others, but other people
Coming from the same place.
coming from
Right,
the same
yeah.
place or nearby. I don't know. I noticed that everybody from Europe, for example, take the plane from Amsterdam to here. So obviously we can share that information, and we can also force or enforce people to do more research and just instead of just filling the blanks.
Right.
Like the situation.
Tasya.
Yeah, the other thing besides the report or any kind of feedback that sponsored people should be either encouraged or forced to do. The other thing is, as I think the team could agree in some goals. What is this team working for, and why do we sponsor people? So that it would serve as guideline for people to see if they. It's not that am I eligible or not to sponsorship, but is it the thing of giving space for more people if I can pay, or like some why do we sponsor people, and should I ask for some sponsorship or not? If we can agree basic goals of this committee, this team or this effort of DebConf organization, I think this could already like at least serve, and we believe that we trust people to be sensible and to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And Dave,
Yeah.
you think?
The problem
We
is
will
that
never
many
have
people
this-
apply, and we may trust some of them, but probably not all of them. So
But I think it would already have help, because what we have now, we don't even have this.
yes.
So people can just say, oh, I didn't know. I thought you had plenty of money, and why not? If there is money,
Yeah.
But if we have at least the goals clear, why it's not sustainable that every single DD apply. So maybe you should consider that you can contribute a little bit so that you live for who else need more.
Okay.
Something like that.
Dave.
So I think we should try a bit harder to get something concrete down about how need plays into this evaluation process, even if it's quite vague and it's not satisfactory to any one of us. Having nothing there is worse than I mean, I think it's a big problem with the current, well, when I say the process for the last 5 years, as long as I've known it. So I don't know how we can move forward with this, but I suspect that email lists are not going to be great. But anyway, so it's not so much a question as I think this is a problem, and I think we should try and
But
fix it.
careful because it is a problem, but it's not drama. I mean, people, it's not like stop eating for coming here, and it's and this is kind of a lecture. I don't know. I check my ticket and I ask for sponsorship. If I don't get the sponsorship, I put money in advance in Debian, and I maybe not be able to come the next year. But it's not like I'm pretty sure that it's not, or it should not be a decision for the economy of anybody to be here. And
Well, I think, but okay, so we're way over time. I think I'm talking about something different. So you're talking about what it means for need for individuals. I'm talking about supposing we could define that, how it should matter to the committee.
Right.
And we have a range of options. I think nobody thinks it shouldn't matter at all.
No,
At least I haven't heard anybody propose that. I'm not saying that you would be crazy, but, and some people think it should be, Marga explicitly said it should be
Very
one of the main
Yes.
criteria, right? And so, I don't know if we can, I think we have to do better than we do now in terms of people knowing, as Mark said, going in a little bit about how much this matters. And that will also help people fill out the form in a more sensible way if they know that, you know, this is, we base a third of our ranking on your financial need.
Yeah.
Or something like this.
So to wrap up, there are I will try to provide as much data as I can publicly about this year. So parts of that form in terms of medium request and this kind of number, so people can have a public idea about it, and that can goes into the final report. And then I will try to synthesize what we discussed here, and then thinking about some goals, and especially for me, it's very important to have the rules. Like, this is how we try to grade you, and then mix that with the goals of, like, our primary goal is to fund people that cannot come without this sponsorship. Our secondary goal, so try to reach consensus around that. And then, and the third thing is we'll try to find some of these questions. One little thing that I remember that I didn't post here, but you were discussing, is that one of the things that I would like to try for next year is ask some volunteers to go and get a list of all the countries that people are coming from. It's 40, and then we split them on 10 people. Every people makes 4 research about how much is a flight ticket, and we have a median. Or, as Luciano suggested, we crowdsource that and have everybody input that so we can calculate a median. So those things can work. And the last thing is, for the next year, one of the things that I'm going to propose, which I know is controversial, is having 2 people on this committee be sponsored by Debian. So we don't worry about last minute things like, oh, you're asking for travel sponsorship, so you can organize this, which will be my case. I won't be able to go to Germany if I don't ask for travel sponsorship, so I won't be able to work on this thing again. So, and I know that it will be a problem for other people.
I don't understand. You say that
our auditors team asked for, nobody on the bursaries can ask for travel sponsorship.
Okay.
So I will ask this to be sponsored directly by Debian, right?
I don't think that solves the problem.
Well,
In the past, being in the Bursaries committee and asking for travel sponsorship was penalizing yourself.
yeah, I remember that era. But this year they requested to not even be penalized. That you can't be part of the team. You can have access to the numbers. So
Request from the auditors team?
the auditors.
yeah, Clint and somebody else asked for this.
I don't think it's unreasonable.
It was a discussion. It was a decision from some previous discussion of this topic.
Marty, I think you have the last word, and then we are done.
Well, I did want to have the last word, because I did want to say thank you very much for this work. It was awesome to be working with you. You took it up and you drove this. And for us, at least me, just being part of the bursaries team, it felt like, stuff was moving and I could help a little bit. So I hope you're going to keep doing this. And I would say you should just get sponsored, even if you're doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
That was way better than when I